and welcome to this tutorial on formulating a topic for your LEAP or ECQ academic assignment and creating a working title. In this tutorial, we'll be looking at the following themes: how to go about choosing a topic, how to narrow down topics so that we arrive at a working title that's more focused and manageable, and also how to plan and prepare research so that the time is used most effectively. Okay, so let's look at how to go about choosing a topic. And although it might be an obvious thing to say, the first step in choosing a topic is to think about what you're really interested in. By choosing a topic that genuinely excites and interests you, you will find it much easier to maintain motivation and interest, especially over a longer period of time. Initially, it's a good idea to make a list of all the topics that you might like to find out more about. At this stage, don't worry about whether ideas are general or very specific. The point is to write down as many as possible. You might want to write them down in a list form or to write them onto sticky notes. The advantage of using sticky notes is that you can move them around later and create clusters of shared or similar related interests. An optional second step is then to think about how many of your ideas you might be able to combine. And don't worry if you can't find combinations at this stage, or if you decide it's not appropriate, or indeed if you've already decided pretty much the kind of area that you want to focus on. This is just an optional idea that can help generate some novel and interesting ways of looking at particular topics. Once you've decided on a topic, or a combination of topics, the next vital step is to see how this might be narrowed down. And this process is so important because, first of all, it enables you to focus on detail and depth rather than breadth. And a related advantage is that this focus on detail also makes the assignment much more manageable from a practical point of view. To help illustrate this point about the value of depth over breadth, imagine that you are taking a day trip to London, arriving by train at 9 and returning at 6 in the evening. You only have limited time, so you make a list of all the things that you would like to see and do. Now, if you listed lots of places to visit, you might just about get around to seeing everything you want to. But the chances are that even if you did, you would only be able to spend a very small amount of time at each place. What's more, you would spend a good part of your day rushing around between locations and worrying about whether you would fit them all in on time. Now imagine instead that you made a shorter list of priority attractions. This way, although you would visit fewer places, you would actually get to spend more time at each and get to know each in greater detail. You would also be much less pushed for time, and so wouldn't need to worry about getting everything done that you wanted to. The same goes for your assignment. If the topic and working title you choose is too broad and aims to cover too many areas, you will not be able to provide the detail and depth that you are looking for, and you may well struggle to manage the workload. Alternatively, if you focus on depth, perhaps just covering 2 or 3 main points in detail, you'll be much better placed to provide what your tutors are looking for, and you'll also be much better placed to manage the workload as well. So, when formulating your assignment topic and coming up with a working title, ask yourself the following kinds of questions. Could you focus on a particular aspect or theme within the broad topic that you've come up with? Are there particular parts of the world, or indeed parts of the UK, that you could focus on? There may be particular sections of the population that you would like to look at in more detail, for example based on age group, ethnicity, gender, etc. Likewise, there might be particular periods of time that provide greater focus. And last but not least, you could think about narrowing down the types of information sources that you will consult. All of these kinds of criteria, depending on the type of assignment you're doing, can be helpful in bringing some focus and indeed depth to the assignment that you're writing. Okay, so let's have a look at some practical examples of this narrowing down process in action. In our first example, an interest in global warming might lead you to think about some of the main causes and effects of global temperature rises. In developing greater focus for your assignment, you could then decide to look in detail at maybe just one of the main causes and its effects on a particular part or parts of the world. In this next example, let's imagine that our starting point is an interest in gender roles and sexism. This might lead you to think more about how these issues can impact upon the lives of women and men. For an assignment, though, it would be more sensible to narrow things down even further and think about perhaps the impact on a particular area of activity, for example, the choices that men and women make about what to study and why. And in this final example, let's imagine that we're interested in 20th century literature. This might lead us to think about particular forms of writing and literature, for example, poems, novels, short stories, etc. And from here, we might then choose to focus on particular writers and how they use these different forms in order to deal with particular themes. Now, the assessed element of this unit contains a short quiz based on previous assignment titles, and this quiz should help you provide useful pointers. This quiz should help provide useful pointers to you, I should say, about how you can go about creating a working title for your own assignment. Okay, so just some final brief words then on planning and preparing your assignment. Once you've narrowed down your topic or topics, you'll need to think about how you go about planning the assignment itself. And there's lots more detail and information on planning in a subsequent unit on this study skills module. So I won't go into huge detail now. I'll just introduce you to some key pointers and some key issues to be aware of at this stage. First of all, perhaps the most obvious starting point, how long have we got between now and the final deadline? Crucially though, if we think perhaps a bit of a way before that final deadline to allow for any changes or corrections that you might want to make to the final assignment, how long before the final deadline would you actually want to have the assignment more or less complete, bearing in mind that you probably will want to make changes and adjustments and corrections before you hand the assignment in? And another important question is, how much time do you think you really need to give to the writing? Because one of the dangers in a project like this is that we perhaps spend so much time researching, reading, making notes, planning, etc., that we don't give ourselves sufficient time to complete the writing. So in a subsequent unit on this module, we'll be looking at how we can bring the writing process forwards so that we give ourselves sufficient time to plan, draft, write, etc. Okay, so you've got plenty to work on for this unit. There's the assessed component, which asks you to come up with a proposal and a working title for you to share with your tutor, and you'll get feedback on that. But for now, thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the unit.